We just want to tell you about the latest videos we've released on our other channel, Paranormally Listed. Our latest video is about disasters that were predicted. In one case, several people foresaw one of the worst air disasters in American history in their dreams, but yet no one could stop it. The video we released before that is about haunted high schools, which includes the story of a jealous member of the marching band who seems doomed to spend the rest of eternity in the school. And then there's 3 haunted murder houses, where we look at 3 homes where someone was brutally murdered and their ghosts may still linger. You can find a link to Paranormally Listed in the description box below, and we'll have a link to the channel in all 3 videos at the end of this video. Before we start today's video, we want to bring you a word from our amazing sponsor, Magellan TV. Last week I was scrolling through Magellan TV's new releases section, and one title caught my eye. It's not a true crime documentary. Instead, it's a science one that was produced by Magellan TV and it's exclusive to their platform. It's called Killer Asteroid. Earth has been hit with huge asteroids in the past. So, could it happen again? It's definitely possible, but unlike other species before us, we may be able to use science to save ourselves. The documentary looks at what scientists are already doing to protect us from space objects. It also talks about what happens if we don't protect ourselves. Killer Asteroid is available in 4K, so the picture quality is amazing. Killer Asteroid was so good, it makes me look forward to other Magellan TV originals. They have over 3,000 documentaries, including a great selection of true crime documentaries. You should check out Magellan TV because they have a great offer for criminally listed viewers. They are offering our viewers 30 days of free service. To get this amazing offer, go to try.magellantv.com/criminally-listed. So please check out Magellan TV today because you'll find something great to watch and you'll be supporting Criminally Listed in the process. Number 3. Leonardo Garcia Gonzalez Jr. and Victor Tovar Gonzalez. On June 21, 2006, the parents of Christopher Marcus Lampkin reported their 23-year-old son missing to the Salem, Oregon police. They had not seen or heard from him for several months. It wasn't unusual that they hadn't heard from him in a while because Lampkin had problems with methamphetamine. They thought that drugs could be the reason he disappeared. Lampkin was last seen months earlier on April 10, 2006. He was riding in a green sedan in West Salem, Oregon. At the beginning of their investigation, the police said that Lampkin went missing under suspicious circumstances and that foul play may have been involved. The police investigated for over a year. Then, the police received a tip. The tip led the police to a pig farm in McMinnville, Oregon. The police looked around the property and they came across a feeding barrel that was hidden behind a bush. In the barrel was a duffel bag. Inside the duffel bag were some body parts. One of the body parts was a piece of an arm and a watch was on the wrist. Christopher Lampkin's mother said it was her son's watch. DNA testing was done, and in October 2007, the results confirmed that they were the body parts of 23-year-old Christopher Lampkin. The farm belonged to the Schmidt family. Joseph Smith Jr., son of the owners, agreed to help the police in exchange for immunity. He told them that the body parts were brought to the farm by 2 cousins, 23-year-old Leonardo Garcia Gonzalez Jr. and 20-year-old Victor Tovar Gonzalez. The police tracked down the cousins, and Victor confessed. Victor and Lampkin were middle school friends, but they had drifted apart. Earlier in the night, Lampkin disappeared. They bumped into each other in the parking lot of Victor's apartment building. Victor invited Lampkin up to his apartment to have drinks with him and his cousins. After hanging out for a bit, Lampkin left the apartment to make a phone call. Victor knew about Lampkin's meth problems. He also knew that Lampkin had friends who robbed people. So Victor became paranoid and thought that Lampkin was setting up him and his cousins to be robbed. Once Lampkin was back in the apartment, Victor and his 2 cousins, Leonardo Gonzalez and Seferino Sanchez Gonzalez, attacked Lampkin. Leonardo pulled out a gun and put it to Lampkin's head. Lampkin was ordered to get on his knees. On his knees, he begged for his life. Leonardo shot 23-year-old Christopher Lampkin in the head, execution style. The cousins dragged Lampkin's corpse into the apartment bathtub. They dismembered his body with kitchen knives. They put the body parts into a duffel bag when they were done. Then they called their friend Joseph Smith Jr., whose family owned the pig farm. They fed most of the body to the pigs, and then they put the rest in the barrel. All three Gonzalez cousins were indicted in late 2007. Victor made a plea deal. In December 2007, he pleaded guilty to being a felon in possession of a firearm, assault, 2 counts of hindering prosecution, abuse of a corpse, and unlawful use of a weapon. As part of his plea agreement, Victor wrote a 13-page account of the crime, which was read aloud in court. Victor Tovar Gonzalez was sentenced on February 12, 2008. At the sentencing, Victor begged the Lampkin family for their forgiveness. "I'm sorry for what happened," he said, addressing the family. "Please forgive me for everything that happened." "You're sorry you got caught," a woman from Lampkin's family yelled back. Victor Tovar Gonzalez was sentenced to 15 years of prison, the maximum amount for the plea agreement. Svetlana Sanchez Gonzalez, who helped his cousins beat and move Lampkin's body, also pleaded guilty to his role in the murder. At the time, he was in the Oregon State Penitentiary for an unrelated charge. In early 2008, Svetlana Sanchez Gonzalez was sentenced to 4 years in prison. The sentence was added to the sentence he was already serving. Leonardo Garcia Gonzalez Jr., who pulled the trigger, pleaded guilty to the murder and the dismemberment of Christopher Lampkin in November 2007. He was sentenced on January 31, 2008. At a sentencing hearing, Leonardo showed little emotion as the judge delivered his sentence. Leonardo Garcia Gonzalez was sentenced to life in prison with a special condition. If he is found eligible for parole after 25 years, he'll have to serve another 2 years for mutilating Lampkin's body. At the time of this video, only Leonardo is incarcerated. He's serving his sentence at the Oregon State Penitentiary. Number 2. Svetlana Batukova. In 2016, Horst Hans Henkel was a 66-year-old German retiree living with his 46-year-old Russian wife, Svetlana Batukova, on the Spanish island of Mallorca. Batukova was a well-known animal lover, posting pictures with their dogs on social media often. The couple had known each other for about 2 years before they married in January 2016. Unfortunately, their union was not a happy one. Police were routinely called to break up fights at their home. Henkel could not talk much because he had recently had a trachea operation. On April 1, 2016, authorities were once again called to the couple's home. When the police arrived on the scene, they found Batukova under the influence of cocaine and alcohol. They also found Henkel dead in a large pool of blood. 66-year-old Horst Hans Henkel had been stabbed multiple times with a kitchen knife, and a piece of his flesh had been cut off. It turned out that those pieces were eaten by the couple's 2 Staffordshire Bull Terriers. Batukova was arrested for the murder of her husband. Reports differ on how she acted upon her arrest. Some reports claim she acted hysterical, while others claim she said nothing to the authorities. Batukova was held in a psychiatric ward upon her arrest. Experts said she had a psychotic episode brought on by drugs and alcohol. But apparently, Batukova had previously attempted to murder Henkel. She had supposedly tried to pay a hitman $57,000 to murder her husband. Batukova maintained her innocence. She claimed that the dogs mauled her husband, ripping out the flesh that caused the hemorrhaging. Svetlana Batukova's trial started on June 10, 2019, and lasted 7 days. The prosecution argued she drugged her husband with diazepam, also known as Valium. She then cut pieces of flesh off his arm to feed to their dogs while he was still alive. The defense insisted that the dog attack was responsible for his death. However, forensic experts testified that Hinkle was definitely attacked with a knife. The jury found Svetlana Batukova guilty of her husband's murder. They agreed that Batukova had attacked her husband with a knife, but they were not convinced she had sedated him or cut off pieces of his flesh to feed to their dogs. As a result, she was found guilty of homicide, which is a lesser charge than murder in Spain. Batukova was sentenced to 14 years of prison. She appealed her conviction in 2020, claiming irregularities in the hearing and not enough evidence was presented to prove her guilt. Her appeal was denied and her 14-year sentence was upheld. Number 1. Harrel Braddy. Shandell Maycock, a 22-year-old receptionist who lived in Miami, Florida, was used to living on what little she had. Shandell had been on her own since she was 16. Her parents kicked her out of the house when they found out she became pregnant by an older man. Shandell and her young daughter, Quatisha, whom she called Candy, often struggled to get by. While not having the ideal life, Candy was happy. She loved school. Her kindergarten teacher referred to her as the ideal kindergarten student. Shandell often asked for help with rides from work or to pick up her daughter. She often relied on members of her church to help her. At church, Shandell became acquainted with Svetlana Brady through a mutual friend. Svetlana was one of the people who helped the young mother and daughter. Her husband, Harrel, also helped. After a few months, Harrel developed romantic feelings for Shandell. He started showing up at her home unannounced. One time, he put a hand on Shandell's leg. This made her angry, and she threatened Harrel with a knife. After that incident, he didn't make any other advances. On November 6, 1998, Harrel and Shandell picked up Candy at childcare and returned to her apartment. Harrel told Shandell that he wanted to talk to her. But Shandell was tired, so she told Harrel someone was coming over. Harrel then attacked Shandell, choking her until she lost consciousness. When she regained consciousness, Harrel choked her out again. Shandell's landlord heard shouting from the apartment before midnight. The landlord looked outside and saw Harrel getting into his car with Candy. But he didn't see Shandell. It turned out that Shandell was already in the car. When she woke up the second time, she was in the back seat in the apartment driveway. Harrel then drove off. After a few minutes, Shandell told Candy, who was in the passenger seat, that they were going to jump out of the car. Harrel told them not to try it. But Shandell didn't listen to him and pulled Candy into the back seat. They opened the door and tried to jump out. But Harrel sped up and swerved, which caused the mother and daughter to roll out onto the road. Harrel then stopped the car. He forced Shandell into the trunk and put Candy in the back seat. Harrel drove about 45 minutes and then pulled into a remote area covered in foliage. Shandell pleaded for her life as Harrel dragged her from the trunk. She asked him why he was doing this, and Harrel said it was because she had used him. He then choked her out for the third time. He left her in the remote area and drove away with her daughter. Harrel returned home, alone. His wife saw him wiping down the car, and the clothes he had been wearing that day were in the washing machine. She thought it was odd he was doing all this so late at night, but didn't ask him about it. At about daybreak, Shundell regained consciousness. She flagged down some people who called the police. "He's got my baby, he's got my baby," is all she could say. On November 7th, Miami-Dade police interviewed Shundell at the Gleitz Hospital, where she was being treated for her injuries. Her throat was swollen, but she managed to tell the police that Harrel Braddy had kidnapped her daughter. She described Harrel and Candy to the police. The police checked Harrel's background and discovered he had a disturbing criminal history. He was arrested for burglary 3 times from September 1969 to December 1970, but all the charges were dropped. In the early 1980s, it seemed like he had turned his life around. He was living in Opelika, Florida. He was married and had 4 young children. Harrel was strong and worked as a bricklayer. He was good at his job and was a supervisor at some of the construction sites. But then, between 1982 and 1984, Harrel was arrested 5 times for burglary. When he was on trial on September 14, 1984, Harrel pulled correctional officer Jose Bermudez into his holding cell and choked him unconscious. Harrel then searched Bermudez for the keys. But Bermudez regained consciousness, so Harrel choked him out again. When Bermudez woke up the second time, Harrel was gone and he banged on the cell's metal toilet for help. By then, it was too late. Harrel had escaped from the courthouse. Bermudez was rushed to the hospital for an emergency tracheotomy. He ultimately survived the attack. Harrel evaded the authorities for 2 weeks. On September 29, 1984, the police located Harrel Braddy in Hollywood, Florida, but he refused to surrender. Police had to use dogs to find and capture Harrel. As a result, Harrel was taken to the hospital for dog bites. At the hospital, Harrel beat up 2 sheriff's deputies, stole their guns, and escaped again. Police went door to door searching for Harrel. Residents were told to lock their doors and keep an eye out for him. Later that night, 74-year-old Hollywood resident Joseph Cole woke up to scratching noises coming from the hallway closet. Thinking it was an animal, he investigated the noise. Cole pulled on the door, but he couldn't get it open. He pulled 2 more times, and then Harrel burst out. He was bleeding from the arms and chest. He was also armed with a gun. Harrel said he didn't want to hurt Cole or his wife, he just wanted to escape from the police. Harrel stuck around for a few minutes, talking to Cole and his wife. Cole faked a heart attack and was excused to the bathroom. But then he snuck out a window and called the police from a neighbor's home. Meanwhile, Harrel asked Cole's wife for the keys to their station wagon. She gave him the keys and he left in the couple's station wagon. The police found the car the next day filled with junk food wrappers. There was no sign of Harrel. The next day, Griffin D. Davis was recording music for his gospel act at a nearby studio. Davis quickly left the recording studio to find a cassette in his 1983 Cadillac Fleetwood. While rummaging through his car, Davis saw something out of the corner of his eye. He turned around and Harrel Braddy was there, pointing a gun at his head. Harrel ordered Davis into the car. They drove west towards US 27. In the car, Davis tried to keep Harrel calm. They talked about religion. Then Harrel ordered Davis to pull over on a deserted stretch of US 27. Harrel demanded that Davis give him all his money. Davis only had $50 and he gave it to Harrel. As the two talked on the side of the road, another car came in their direction. The car's headlights distracted Harrel. This allowed Davis to sneak off and hide in some brush. An officer picked him up and took him to the Miami-Dade police headquarters. At the headquarters, David noticed the wanted picture of Harrel. He told the police that was the man who kidnapped and robbed him. Harrel was found a few days later in Georgia. An officer pulled him over on the highway. He was arrested after providing the parole officer Davis's stolen license as identification. This time, Harrel did not resist arrest. A year later, Harrel was convicted of robbery and kidnapping, among other charges, and he was sentenced to 30 years in prison. During his time in the Glades Correctional Institute, Harrel trained to become a paralegal. He would use that training to represent himself as he unsuccessfully appealed his conviction and sentence. After serving 13 of his 30-year sentence, Harrel was released from prison. He was released early due to gain time, which reduces sentences for good behavior. After the police read about Harrel's background, they realized he was potentially dangerous. The day after the kidnapping, the police found Harrel at a gas station pumping gas. They brought him to the station for questioning. He denied knowing anything about Candy Maycock. But then the detectives told Harrel that Shundell was still alive and she had implicated him in the kidnapping. When Harrel heard that, his tough appearance began to crumble. He went pale, started to sweat, shake, cry, and he claimed he was about to faint. While not officially under arrest, the detectives put handcuffs on Harrel for their own safety. The detectives took Harrel to the Miami-Dade County Police Department. When Harrel kidnapped Shundell and Candy, he was driving a rented Lincoln Town Car. It was collected and examined for evidence. Harrel was read his Miranda rights and a sample of his DNA was taken. The police interviewed Harrel throughout the night, but he refused to say what he did with Candy. Searches were conducted for the 5-year-old girl the next day, but nothing was found. Finally, late in the afternoon, Harrel told the police he would take them to the area where he had left her. Harrel led the investigators to a section of Interstate 75 in Broward County. It was a stretch of canals known as Alligator Alley. Harrel said he left Candy at one of the bridges, but he couldn't remember which bridge. He said he left her there because he was worried she would tell the authorities about what happened. He knew that she would probably die being left out there. The police searches turned up nothing. The next morning, November 9th, 2 fishermen called the police. They found the body of a small child floating in a canal that ran parallel to Alligator Alley. The body was recovered. The Broward County Medical Examiner's Office identified the body as 5-year-old Candy Maycock. The medical examiner said that Candy's missing left arm was pulled off her body by alligators after she was dead. The medical examiner also noted brush burn injuries that occurred while she was alive. These injuries were consistent with being thrown out of a moving car. The medical examiner also reported that Candy suffered alligator bites while she was still alive. He believes she received them while she was unconscious or near death. The medical examiner concluded that Candy's cause of death was blunt force trauma. This was likely due from falling from a high distance or hitting an object like a jutting rock. So it's believed that Harrel threw Candy while she was still alive off a bridge into the alligator-filled water. She struck her head, most likely on a rock, and then alligators attacked her. Harrel Braddy was hit with several charges, including first-degree murder, attempted first-degree murder, and kidnapping. Harrel kept delaying the trial by firing his lawyers. So he didn't go to trial until July 2007, 9 years after the murder. The trial lasted a week and the jury deliberated for 2 hours. He was found guilty on all charges. 11 of the 12 jury members recommended that Harrel be sentenced to death. The judge decided to do what most of the jury wanted, and he was sentenced to death. Harrel had trained as a paralegal, and he spent the next 13 years appealing his sentence. His case went all the way to Florida's Supreme Court. In 2017, the death sentence was overturned. The Supreme Court of Florida ruled that the judge should have only sentenced him to death if all jury members had voted for the death penalty. No record could be found regarding his new sentence. However, Harrel was sentenced to life in prison for his other convictions. It's unclear where 73-year-old Harrel Braddy is currently serving his sentence. According to the Florida Department of Corrections, Harrel Braddy is out of department custody by court order. Thank you so much for watching today's video. Please don't forget to check out our new channel, Paranormally Listed. There's a link on the screen now, and there's a link in the description box below this video. Well, that's all for today. Thanks again for watching.